welcome to Mr. Roboto. My name is Mike. We're recording from Austin during South by Southwest week. We enjoyed the... You're screwing me up. My not co-host is screwing me up here. We enjoyed the Mr. Robot Ferris wheel this week. If you want to see pics of that, you can go to our Instagram. That's at mrrobotpodcast.com/Instagram. You can also email us, feedback at mrrobotpodcast.com, and visit our website, mrrobotpodcast.com. This episode is a discussion of the series premiere of Mr. Robot. Nate Bliss and I go into pretty heavy detail about the series premiere, so if you haven't watched it, I suggest you watch it. You can find it on iTunes, on Amazon, I think it's on USA's website, and on demand as well, and Blu-ray and DVD. Okay, hope you enjoy it. Nate, welcome back to Mr. Roboto.
Thank you.
Today we're going to talk about the Mr. Robot series premiere, Hello Friend.
Yes.
Or S1E1 Hello Friend _ 01.mov.
Yeah. Oh, you remembered that?
No, that's off the top of my head.
Oh, okay.
It's probably totally wrong, but it's something like that.
Yeah.
Every episode has a different audio or video file extension at
Right.
the end of it, like MOV, AVI, Q, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, the premiere was called Hello Friend, was available to watch on YouTube about a month or so before it premiered.
Oh, really?
On the USA Network,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And it premiered here in Austin at the South by Southwest Film Festival, and it won some kind of audience award. I forgot what award it won. Do you remember?
I don't. I was not there.
You were not there?
I was not there.
You stayed home that day. I didn't watch this thing until like a month or more. No, a couple weeks after it premiered on USA because, I don't know, I guess the promos didn't really grab me. I probably didn't have much faith in the show because it's a USA Network show.
Right.
I don't really identify with their brand at all. We talked about that in our first episode. Their brand, I guess at the time, was all about these light, fluffy, fun little detective shows or buddy cop shows and nothing.
Kind of like the CBS of basic cable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not really my bag, you know.
Again, there's that misleading title where it's like Mr. Robot.
Right.
It sounds like a 90s TGIF comedy. It sounds silly.
It sounds silly, and I want the real shit, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
But Mr. Robot brought the real shit.
It is the real shit.
And we're just going to jump into the episode discussion. So I hope you've watched it. We're going to spoil everything in episode 1. Nothing beyond that.
Right.
Nothing beyond episode 1, but just episode 1.
It's going to be really hard to hold back. There are so many surprises.
Yeah, the other day somebody's like, so you're going to cover every episode on your podcasts. I'm like, yeah, and you're not going to spoil anything beyond the episode you're talking about. I'm like, that's right. How are you going to do that? I was like, oh shit, I don't know.
Listener, we don't know.
We don't know. Watch and find out.
Yeah.
Oh, listen and find out.
Listen and find
See,
out.
I'm already screwing it up. Well, right from minute 1, you can tell this is something unique.
Unique for television, definitely.
Right from the beginning, you know you're watching something that's set in our world, in the right now. It feels really present and urgent. In one of his reviews of Mr. Robot on Grantland.com, have you read Andy Greenwald?
I haven't.
Really great critic. He wrote of the show, Mr. Robot felt like a pirate broadcast straight from the zeitgeist. It's not quite enough to say that it aired in USA. I want to say it breathed. Because it was so urgent, you know? I couldn't agree more. So right from the start, we get a deep sense of, well, we meet Elliot Alderson, played by Rami Malek, and we get a deep sense of his paranoia. You get a sense of his worldview and his isolation, even before we see his face. And he starts worrying about talking to an imaginary friend.
Right.
That's us.
Yes.
He puts us in that position. We're the imaginary friend.
Yeah, the viewing audience is essentially witnessing everything that's in his head.
Right. The worldview of the show is filtered, for the most part, through Elliot's eyes. Elliot's eyes, Elliot's brain, which as you watch this episode, you start to think, maybe what I'm seeing is not real. What's real?
Yeah, there are little bits and pieces of that over the course of this first episode that give even more weight to that idea that we're in Elliot's head.
Right.
You know?
right at the beginning, he tells us about this cabal of evil corporate men, the top 1% of the top 1% that are running the world and twisting it to their own ends. And then we get this picture of a group of shadowy suits, possibly buying and selling people's lives like it's nothing.
Yeah.
And like, okay, is this real, or is this in his head? What's happening? And then we finally see Elliot's face. And I think he's on the subway when we first see him. And he looks really strung out. He's on edge. He's paranoid. And then he tells us that he thinks he's being followed. And this is where, for me, the idea that Elliot might be an unreliable narrator started to pull me in. I was thinking, are those men in the black suits really following him, or is he seeing things?
That's true. That's true.
But then we cut to the Ron's coffee scene. And this is where we learn a lot about Elliot.
Yeah, in this Ron's coffee shop scene, in the span of like 2 minutes, we learn pretty much almost everything about Elliot's past. He confronts this person in the coffee shop, and then he starts talking all these things about, like, I really like coming to your coffee shop. You're Ron, right? From Ron's coffee shop? I really like coming here because you have the fastest speed.
Because he likes the fast internet.
He likes fast internet, but it's like, but I wonder why your coffee shop, why you have such, like, something seemed off. It's tickling that part of my brain. I had to find out what it was.
Yeah. When I first watched this pilot, I remembered it that way too. I was like, okay, the fact that Ron's Coffee has such fast internet just for an average coffee shop, that tickles his brain, and he wonders, why is that? But watching it again, I realized what he says was, your internet was so good, it scratched that part of my brain that doesn't allow good to exist without condition.
Right.
So he's like, this is so good, there's something bad behind it. This whole scene, even though on the surface, the idea is that Elliot's setting a trap for this guy, and then he springs a trap at the end. That's the surface meaning of this scene. But really, the real meaning of this scene, like you said, was to give you an entryway into Elliot's mindset, into his history, into his past, into who he is. There's lots of exposition, lots of character exposition in this, and it doesn't feel like weighted down or anything. It's
just one hell of a way to start. All before the opening title pops up on the screen.
It's so suspenseful, like, really, this scene. It's mostly because of the way it's played. It's like, it's a suspenseful scene, but you don't really know what's happening at first. And then things intensify just by little increments.
Yeah.
And I was really pulled in with this scene, which basically is just two guys sitting down at a coffee shop. You know, no explosions, no CSI dead body happening. It's just two characters interacting, engaging, sizing each other up. And it's really compelling. And yeah, we find out a lot about Elliot in this potent little scene. He's a vigilante hacker. Like I say, he doesn't allow good to exist without condition. So again, we get that kind of pessimistic, negative worldview. We learned his father died of cancer.
Right.
Because basically of corporate callousness. The company he worked for, which we come to learn is the big company that we're going to talk about in a little bit, didn't bother to protect its workers from carcinogens, so his dad got cancer and died. And we learn a big thing. He has huge social anxiety. And we learn Elliot doesn't give a shit about money.
That's true.
Which is going to be a big deal in this series.
Money is what he refers to as the invisible hand that guides us all.
Yes.
You know? It's like that. And really, in a way, I mean, we see a lot of antagonists throughout this series, but this systematic control that money has over all of us is, in most ways, the enemy. It's like a ghost. You can't touch it. You can't reason with it. You can't argue with it. It's this thing that's been built in the system. This huge corporate money-making, money-taking system.
Yeah, it's this capitalist monster that dictates our whole life.
Yes.
Which is basically what he ends up fighting against in this episode and in the series going forward. But that first scene at the coffee shop, when I first watched this scene, like right when it started happening, even though it was a little odd and I didn't know what the hell was going on, when it got to the end and the cops show up, right then and there, I thought I knew everything about this show. I was like, okay, so the show is going to be this guy busting bad people every week with his hacking skills.
It's going to be like a reverse procedural.
Exactly.
Like he's a vigilante. He's going out and targeting. And actually, halfway through the episode, he finds someone who's a new target.
Right.
It's like, he's targeting his next person now.
Yeah.
So we're watching like kind of like a hacker version of Dexter, kind of.
Kind of. He doesn't kill him, he hacks him.
He doesn't kill him, he hacks him. But it's that same kind of idea where it's like, I think it's just because we're so used to television being a certain way.
Formulaic,
that we're like, this must be the thing. There's the new hack of the week.
At this point, I was like, okay, well, it's on USA, so it's kind of a edgier version of what they normally do.
Right.
Which is a case of the week.
Yeah.
But that's not what this is. I'm glad I was wrong about that.
So was I.
As the episode progresses, we get to see different sides of Elliot. We come to learn a lot about him. He works at Allsafe, the cybersecurity firm by day, and his firm protects E-Corp, also known as...
Evil Corp.
Evil Corp.
Now, it's only known as Evil Corp in Elliot's head.
Yeah.
There's this little monologue he goes on where he basically says, every single time this company comes up in my world, I think of them as Evil Corp. And it's not that much of a veiled metaphor to see what Evil Corp is or was. I mean, the logo is exactly the same as Enron.
It looks just like the Enron logo.
Yeah, which I think is smart because, I mean, you can basically use that because Enron isn't even a thing anymore.
No.
So I don't think Enron's lawyers are going to come knocking on the door saying, you can't use our E.
Well, Sam Esmail, the creator, even said, yeah, it's the Enron logo.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know they suck, so yeah. They are Evil Corp.
Yeah, or they were. I mean, they're gone.
Right, they're gone. Yeah.
But and it's funny too because like we'll start to see if Elliot's in a room and someone in the real world says Evil Corp, we know in reality they're saying E Corp.
Right.
But Elliot hears it as Evil Corp. So
we even see it on the TV. Like if somebody's
Exactly.
watching TV and Elliot's around,
Yeah.
and it's an E Corp commercial, the commercial says Evil Corp. Which goes back to the idea that the world we're viewing is not really the world. It's getting filtered to this guy's head.
It definitely required the viewer to pay a lot more close attention as things are unfolding.
Definitely. Yeah, so Evil Corp's a giant mega corporation that makes everything and apparently controls all the world's debt. Elliot says his place of employment, a cybersecurity firm that protects Evil Corp, is probably the thing he hates the most, which makes you think, why is he working there? Maybe we'll get an answer down the line. He doesn't even seem to know why he's working there, but his motivations for working there might have something to do with his childhood friend Angela, played by Portia Doubleday, who's really good.
Yeah, she's great.
So when Elliot goes to work, we meet Angela, and I thought it was interesting because Angela ends up being pretty much his only friend, and he says, this is my childhood friend. So it's interesting to note that she's a friend from childhood, which just kind of underscores the idea that adult Elliot doesn't know how to make friends.
That's true.
He hasn't made any friends since he was a kid.
Right.
You know, playing outside in the dirt with his neighbor friend Angela.
We see in flashbacks in the pilot various scenes of Elliot's personal history that probably indicate why he's so closed off.
There's one scene, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, one scene where he's back at his apartment and he's just crying from the loneliness.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, his mother, it seems like she's going to burn out a cigarette on his arm. And she's verbally abusing him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you grew up with abuse, it's going to be hard to relate and to connect with other people.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Elliot likes to space out and go into these inner monologues and think about the things he's done wrong. So Angela likes to call him out on that. She's like, I know you're thinking of something else.
Yeah, Come exactly. Eyes over here.
Yeah,
Come on. Don't space out, man.
Yeah, she's the only one who kind of grounds him. I think. Another awesome thing about Angela in this scene, her douche bro boyfriend,
Ollie,
played by Ben Rappaport, is really concerned with what Elliot thinks of him. He tells Angela, he can't stand me, and you know why. What do you make of that?
Look, from his perspective, I think he's kind of coming at it from a dude bro place where it's like, there's no way these two are best friends.
Yeah, okay.
I think he secretly loves Angela, and, you know, he just can't stand my lacrosse playing
Abercrombie shopping
self is coming in on this hot lady.
Hot piece of something. Hot pizza pie.
Just to look into Ollie's mind.
Right, which we don't relate to at all.
Obviously. Right, yeah, exactly. It's so hard to ad-lib that shit. Oh my God.
Yeah. It kind of makes me think, though, in the past, was there something that he witnessed between Elliot and Angela?
Oh.
You know, something like that. Because we do get a moment at the end that's an almost kiss between them.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. So when Elliot walks in, he's immediately called into his boss's office. And this is when the episode's plot, for me at least, really starts to kick into gear. When Elliot gets to work, Gideon, his boss, and Angela are freaking out because hackers have hit Evil Corp servers. And apparently this is happening a lot lately. Yeah. So Gideon immediately calls Elliot in to take a look at the hack report. And all Elliot can say is, oh, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's like, wow. Yeah, he's almost impressed.
Yeah, he's impressed.
What they've done.
Which further pisses Gideon off.
Yeah.
It's funny that Elliot's reaction to the report of the hack is like the first time we see him genuinely, like, enthused about something. He doesn't crack a smile or anything because I don't think he ever cracks a smile. But he gets a kick out of the details of the hack, which is interesting. And it kind of brightens his day a little bit.
Yeah. Something pressing those buttons where it's like, holy shit, this is something new.
And I think this is important. We later learned that Evil Corp is Allsafe's biggest client. You know, so
pretty much like 70 or 80% of all their business is E Corp. Yeah,
it's 80% of the business. So the boss Gideon is like super on edge.
Oh yeah,
and throughout the whole episode, he's just really on edge because if they lose Evil Corp, then the whole company's going to go under. But Elliot doesn't seem to care.
It's a day job.
It's a day job. Yeah,
like I think so many of us can relate to that, where you just have to go and clock in at a place you're not really too crazy about.
Can you relate to that, Nick?
Yeah,
I think I can hear it in your voice a little bit.
Yeah, it's there.
Now, this was a weird cut. Like, we're in the office, and all of a sudden we cut to Elliot hanging out outside, and then he goes to visit his therapist.
Yes.
And this is probably, for me, one of the most important scenes of this premiere.
It really is.
Yeah.
For many, many reasons.
Yeah.
First, we get to see the transition between how Elliot presents himself in real world and how he thinks in his head.
Yeah.
There's a moment where his therapist is trying to get him to open up. He's holding back. And then she asks him a question, like, why are you so angry?
She says, what is it about society that disappoints you so much?
Yes.
This is where he goes in this very memeable F Society rant, which for me was such a jolting moment upon watching this show. It was really like, oh shit.
It didn't pull any punches. Like,
No,
right off
not
the
at
bat,
all.
he basically says, like, this is a society where we thought Steve Jobs was such a... And this is also right around the time Steve Jobs had passed away, and everyone's like, holy shit, he revolutionized home computing, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it's like, we think he's a great guy, but he made his billions off the backs of child labor. And then they have like all these pictures of like Lance Armstrong and Bill Cosby. And it's no wonder where that reviewer from Grantland basically says this is like transmitting anger straight from the zeitgeist or whatever he said.
Yeah,
because it
exactly.
is. It's like,
it is, yeah.
It's like unflinchingly kind of taking all these beats that were happening at the moment.
It's like the show's really trying to tell you, this is what's wrong with your world.
Yeah, this is happening right now.
Today, this hour, right now. I really identify with what he was saying there, even if it's not always at the top of my mind all the time. His words about how we're all like controlled by debt, how we want to be sedated because we're cowards, how our heroes are corrupt, false idols, like Bill Cosby, like you said. This is straight up, like, not subtle at all. It's in your face social commentary.
Yeah.
I love the way he knocked social media as a running commentary of bullshit, masquerading as insight.
Yeah.
You were just ranting about Facebook before we turned this on, and
holy cow.
That reminded me of this. Yeah. That cutting dialogue coupled with those images that we see on screen, it's really effective. It gets to the heart of what I think Elliot is searching for in the world, which is authenticity.
Also, just stylistically, there's another thing where it's like, you're not watching a typical USA show.
Oh, no. No.
There are a lot of examples throughout the whole series, and a lot of examples just in this first episode.
Yeah.
Where it's almost like every other scene, it's like, this is not a USA show. This is not a USA show.
Yeah.
They're definitely doing something new here.
Exactly. Yeah, in this scene, I mean, he finds authenticity obviously lacking in the world. He's disgusted by the fact that most people are okay with that, with how things are. We just keep spinning our wheels in this broken system, this capitalist system, instead of doing something about it. And that's what really angers him. You know, that's what makes him go on this rant, which we find out, like you were saying, is all in his head.
He's not saying any of this to his therapist.
She's like, you're not saying anything. And then
you're holding back.
You're holding back.
You know what
again.
happens when you get held back. And this is also where we finally get specifics. We learn it from Dr. Krista Gordon's mouth. And she basically says, yes, when you start withholding, that's when your anxiety starts kicking in, and that's when you start seeing things again.
Yeah, she says you're hiding. When you hide, your delusions come back. And that's a slippery slope. That's what she says, which is interesting because in the beginning of the episode, when Elliot creates his imaginary friend.
Yeah, us.
He starts to worry about that. He's like, oh, I'm talking to somebody who's not there. And he says, that's a slippery slope. Yeah, so that's repeated here.
Yep. He's learning stuff from her.
You think that's what it is?
I think some stuff is... He clearly likes...
He likes her
Gordon
a lot because she's authentic. She truly is a person who wants to help people.
Yes.
She wants to help him. She has no other agenda but to help, and he recognizes that. And we do learn a lot more about Elliot in this scene, too, with Krista. We learn that he was forced to go to therapy.
Right.
We don't know why. He says that. He says, I was forced to come here. He lies about taking whatever pills Krista gives him.
Prescribes him
because he's not taking pills.
He's taking a different kind of pill.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
As we'll hear in the next scene.
He lies about not seeing the men in black on the subway, which he does see. And we learn that he thinks that he can read people really well because he always looks for the worst in them. It's like, cheer up, dude. What was your impression of Krista, the therapist?
I liked her a lot. She's a great actress. She's played by Gloria Rubin. and she's really good. She's good at the kind of slow, deliberate dialogue, that a therapist would kind of adopt.
Yeah.
She's playing the Jennifer Melfi side of things very well. But throughout this first episode, we get to see a lot of range, even though we only really see her sitting in the therapist chair. We only see her in a couple places, but in those few places, she's very warm and caring in some moments. She's also kind of a little worried and scared of Elliot in one or two dialogue exchanges. We see her very sad at the end of the episode.
Right.
She was one of my favorite actors in this whole first season.
For this role, they really needed somebody who could emote so many different, like the spectrum of emotion, but still seem composed all the time.
And professional.
Exactly. And she nailed it.
And also someone who genuinely wants to help.
And, I think I read somewhere that they were going to cut that therapy scene.
Really?
Because they place it right in the middle of his workday, which is like he shows up to work, and then 5 minutes later he's going to therapy. So it's a little odd in the context of the premiere episode, but I'm glad they didn't. That would have been ridiculous because the manifesto, like for the show, pretty much is right there, or for Elliot's character anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, before we move on from that scene, I want to say one more thing about his F Society monologue.
Okay.
I love that he undercuts it by saying something like, "I'm not saying anything new," because he is and he isn't. The details of his speech, like some of the specifics, the references might be new, like social media, whatever.
Right.
But the content really isn't. It's an anti-capitalist, anti-consumerism mindset, that we hear crop up in art and entertainment a lot. In every generation, really. It seems like from Catcher in the Rye to The Graduate to Fight Club, this is kind of an ongoing struggle that's portrayed on screen, and in literature for what seems to be like forever. So this show is continuing that tradition, which is good.
And it's a little, it's kind of depressing that it hasn't gone away.
It hasn't gone away. No.
It's still here.
No, the dystopia in this show is actually the life that we live every day.
Yeah.
That's kind of the message here.
Yeah.
I'm sad. Anyway, it's nice to see the show kind of acknowledge that, but still have the guts to tackle that theme in this episode and really the entire series.
You're right. It is a little sad when our entertainment is a mirror on the depressing realities of what's actually going on. It's like watching an episode of Black Mirror.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's some moments during Mr. Robot where I'm like, this is going Charlie Brooker Black territory here.
Mr. Robot fans, if you haven't seen Black Mirror,
watch it.
Watch Black Mirror.
It's the Twilight Zone put through the filter, of the same filter that Mr. Robot's put through.
After the therapist scene, he's back at work, and we get an interesting scene with douche bro Ollie.
Ollie is funny just because it's like, we know exactly who this guy is. We've seen his Facebook pages. We've seen his tweets.
Mm-hmm.
We know exactly who this is.
I like how he's trying to make friends with Elliot, and he's like flexing in front of him. It's like, I'm working that shit,
his
bro.
His dialogue goes away completely. And it's just like he's just in the background pantomiming, doing all these kind of
I read that
things.
That Sam Esmail...
Did he just tell him just go
vamp.
nuts?
Just vamp. Yeah. And he came up with all this douchey dialogue.
Yeah, and every once in a while the dialogue will come back in where it's like, I like music, you like music, you should listen to Maroon 5
Maroon 5, dude?
Huh? Yeah.
It's like,
oh my God.
He's probably thinking the lead singer of Maroon 5 kind of has an alternative look to him. Elliot probably likes him.
Yeah. There's some overlap
He's
there.
got tats on him.
Yeah. That's the worst fucking thing.
We learn one of his favorite movies is Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. One of his favorite books, George Bush's Decision Point.
Yeah.
So, like Elliot, I hate him too.
Yeah.
But you can't blame Elliot for it.
Elliot knows he's easy to handle.
Right.
He can manage Ollie.
And he needs to manage Ollie because Ollie is his best friend's boyfriend, he probably the only person at this point we know that he cares about deeply. Even though Ollie's cheating on...
He's cheating on Angela with some
other girl.
Some internet floozy.
But right now, Ollie's manageable.
A doofus and a poser, but not an evil person.
Guy whose password is 1234567.
7.
That's the combination
of
my luggage.
Combination of my luggage.
Oh yeah, and Ollie tries to like give him like a bro tag on the back.
Right.
And we learn Elliot doesn't like to be touched.
Elliot doesn't like to be touched.
He doesn't like to be touched.
He shies away.
Yeah. That reminded me of the scene that's coming up where he's alone in his apartment and he thinks back to the possibly abusive relationship with his mother.
Ugh.
But before that, you could almost hear the Star Wars Darth Vader theme play because Evil Corp walks into the room.
Oh, yeah.
I like that Elliot calls them the perfect monster of modern society.
Yeah.
Evil Corp.
Yeah. And Elliot's monologue is interrupted by Patrick Bateman.
The American Psycho himself.
Yeah, by
Terrell Wellick. Martin Wallstrom. A Swede. On the surface of things, him and Elliot look like complete opposites. But it turns out, during this little conversation they have a lot of stuff in common.
Wellick, by sight, knows what Linux operating system Elliot's using. And Elliot's like, his inner monologue kicks in, and he goes like, wait, what? An executive using Linux? And then Wellick interrupts his thing. Is, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. What's a VP of a company doing running Linux? I guess old habits die hard.
He repeats his inner monologue.
Yeah,
back to
exactly.
At this point, were you thinking,
is this for real?
Is this in Elliot's head? Yeah, right?
He interrupts his monologue, so it's like, so are we witnessing for the first time? Is this a hallucination?
Right, because we already know he has hallucinations.
And it was also kind of interesting to me. So they have this little exchange. They kind of talk about things, and Terrell kind of ominously says, it's like, be really happy working with you, Elliot. I have to rejoin the group. The group left stage left, and he walks stage right.
That's true.
I'm like, wait, what? That kind of set my internal radar off for a second. I'm like, there's something up with this guy,
Yeah, you're right. And when he walks in the opposite direction, he says, bonsoir, Elliot.
Bonsoir, Elliot.
And then we get to Elliot's little grungy apartment, where he lets us know not only does he get lonely, but he sits in the corner and cries because he can't keep that loneliness in.
It just completely overtakes him.
And that visual of Rami Malek in the corner crying was really impactful.
It really was, yeah.
Yeah. It was just, we're actually seeing this character in the most vulnerable state possible. Without him physically being hurt, without anybody coming to dress him down. This is just his life.
This is the state that he will return to, in many times, which is how depression happens.
Exactly.
It's how depression works.
Yeah.
Now, I can't really speak for, hallucinations or delusions or anything like that.
Are you sure?
Pretty sure. Pretty sure. But the way that mental illness and, mental conditions are portrayed on this show really hit home, because a lot of shows kind of go with a gimmicky kind of way.
Like a one-dimensional thing. Or,
Oh,
this person's crazy. What's up?
Or if they're depressed, they look sad. Because, that's the thing. It's like if someone's depressed, it's not that they're sad all the time. Depressed people don't look sad.
Yeah, they look like people.
Exactly. Which is why you can never really tell if someone's like really being hit by depression, know. In this case, we're being allowed a look into Elliot's personal home life. And so, that's when all the facade comes down. That's when all the barriers are gone. All the defenses are away. And he has to deal with this. And he deals with this by not with a prescription that his therapist gave him, but by grinding up morphine and starting it up. But he does it in a very interesting way.
Yeah.
Where it's like he'll take a tab of morphine, and I forgot what it's called, but he takes a tab of he basically takes withdrawal drugs.
Aloxin.
Aloxin, that's what it was.
Yeah.
It's like he dips in the pool.
Yeah.
He takes the aloxin to come out of the pool.
But, the way I read that is that he is a junkie. He's just lying to himself that he's not.
Oh, he totally is.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He thinks he's being responsible about it, but he's not being responsible about it.
No.
Being responsible would be going to Krista every day and actually working through that therapy.
Right.
And maybe taking the pills that a doctor prescribes,
Yeah.
not buying morphine from the cookie girl next door.
Yeah. And speaking of the cookie girl next door.
Shayla.
I love Shayla. She's great.
Yeah, she's
a great
awesome.
character. She isn't given much to do in the pilot. Essentially, she kind of comes in. She gives him his withdrawal meds on the house. And
she offers him some mollies.
Yep. And they sleep together. Yeah. But from Elliot's perspective, he's kind of like, get out, Shayla. I don't want you around, Shayla. Just please leave, Shayla.
And it's funny because she brings in so much like light and positivity.
Totally.
It's interesting because, like Elliot, she kind of also lives on the fringes of society.
Right.
And she's played by Frankie Shaw, who's just really...
She's great. Yeah.
Really great. But Shayla kind of lives on the fringes of society. Obviously, she lives in this bad part of town where Elliot lives. And she's a drug dealer, right? That's how she gets by. So, fringes of society, right? But besides that, she comes off as such a normal person.
Yeah.
She's just a normal, happy person. She sleeps in late. She goes on Facebook. You know, she doesn't understand why Elliot doesn't have a Facebook.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
like, you don't have Facebook? That's crazy.
I hate Facebook.
What's wrong
That's
with
crazy.
you? Yeah. In that moment, I kind of side with her. I'm like, yeah, it is kind of, you know, you got to have a Facebook.
It's weird, though, because I sided with Elliot in this situation.
Okay.
Like, I fucking hate Facebook. God damn it.
By the way, join our Facebook group. The Mr. Robot Podcast Arcade.
Yes, please join our Facebook
You can find
group.
that at mrrobotpodcast.com/group.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Shayla's awesome. We don't get much of her, but the little we get, it's really enjoyable.
She's really great.
Yeah. But then after he sleeps with Shayla, he gets an Instagram alert that Chris is out with this shady character, Michael. The therapist is out with this shady
back to
guy.
the hack of the week.
He's like, you know what? There's something wrong with this guy. I'm going to find out. So he follows him. But his attempt to hack Michael kind of gets interrupted because Angela calls him.
Yes.
And there's been another attack on Evil Corp. Another hacker attack. So he's pulled back to the office. A DDoS attack, which we'll go into
Denial
later.
of service.
Yeah, denial of service.
This is a big one.
Yeah.
This is like,
it's a huge attack.
It's bigger than anything that they've dealt with before. You know, their on-call guy can't seem to manage it.
Lloyd says
he's great.
These hackers are basically finger blasting the entire network.
Lloyd, I love how almost every line out of Lloyd's mouth, people are like, "Really, Lloyd?
Well,
come on!"
My favorite line from Lloyd, who doesn't get many lines, but
Doesn't get many,
they're
but
very colorful.
Yeah,
it's like, what's a rootkit? It's a crazy ass serial rapist with a very big dick.
Lloyd.
Oh, thanks for that definition. I like that he says that with his boss in the room.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
And Gideon doesn't even seem to react to it because he's so like paranoid about what's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, Gideon shows up, Angela shows up, Lloyd's there, Elliot's there. Everybody's freaking out about this DDoS attack.
But the person who seems to be the most relaxed person in the room, just because he's so detached, is Elliot. Essentially, he saves the day.
Yeah.
And it is a bit of like, I imagine that the directors must have a tricky time with hacking because visually it's not a very interesting thing to do for the television medium.
Especially with this show because they're not doing anything super fake when it comes to the computer screen.
Exactly.
You're not getting like these flashy CGI animations, you know what I mean?
You watch a sitcom or even like, you know, like 90s, like X-Files or Buffy and stuff like that. And you see like the AUL instant message system and everything's like in like 50-point font type and it just looks totally fake.
Like you look at Elliot's screen and you see Linux.
Yeah,
you know?
You see Linux, you see Facebook, you see everything.
You see all that stuff.
Into.
Yeah, and it's not like CSI Cyber. You know,
exactly.
where the screens there's like it is like a disco show happening.
We're not seeing the cascade of green letters like in the Matrix. You know, and we're not seeing any shit from hackers. Or anything. You know, we're seeing the real thing. Which visually, you see a bunch of people at the computer. It's not terribly interesting.
But this is where we get an interesting twist.
Essentially, Elliot saves the day, and Elliot's kind of left alone, looking at the damage, looking at what's left, and he finds a DAT file.
And there's a message in there that says, well, the first message says F Society. First, when you see that, F Society, you're like, that's dumb. And in that second, Elliot's inner monologue, is this a joke?
F Society.
Yeah, F Society, is this a joke? And you're like, okay, this show knows it's funny. You're dumb. Yeah. He goes into the file, and there's a message that says, leave me here.
Yes.
And instinctively, Elliot seems to know this message is for me. And then he has kind of an internal struggle. He's like, I'm supposed to delete this, but I want to leave it here.
He leaves it there, but he changes it so only he has access to it.
He hides it, he encrypts it, so the root directory is basically his now.
Mm-hmm.
No one can access it or see it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And pretty soon we meet the character who we will call Mr. Robot.
We've got little flashes of him in the past, you know?
Yeah. Exciting times in the world, kiddo.
Yeah. Exciting times.
I love Christian Slater.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the scene right after this with Gideon coming out to Elliot?
That was good.
Yeah.
I mean, it basically showed that Gideon is not just simply the cranky, high-strung boss.
Right. There's a genuine side of him that comes across.
Yeah, totally.
And that scene in the jet, Elliot kind of responds to that too, like he does to genuine people. And he starts to feel a little bit for Gideon. He says, don't worry, I'll take care of this or I'll get them. He wants to comfort him. He wants to tell him, your world is not going to fall apart.
So, we're seeing this side of Elliot where it's like he does care about people.
And that's why, you know, he tells Gideon, don't worry, I'm going to take care of this.
Yeah.
That's why when Angela calls at 3 a.m., he shows up right away. Yeah, he wants to take care of her.
Yeah.
And that's why he hacks the therapist's boyfriend, because he wants to take care of her.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a scene where Elliot says, I'd like to save the world. He wants to help everybody, but he's not that special. He doesn't think he has the power to. So at his core, he's a really good guy. Mm-hmm. The way he goes about being a good guy is a little duplicitous and shady and weird and invasive.
But it's the only way he knows how.
Yeah.
But it's interesting what you said about how he wants to save the world and he wants to help everyone, but he doesn't really seem to have the means to do that. And then we meet Christian Slater's character, Mr. Robot.
Mr. Robot shows up.
Yeah.
Well, the bum we've been seeing,
Yeah.
who's played by Christian Slater,
Yeah.
shows up. And it's interesting because when Slater first shows up at the beginning of the episode, you see 20 seconds of him, 10 seconds of him. And just from the few seconds we get, he's already a really colorful, larger-than-life presence.
Mm-hmm.
For me, he kind of just broke the tone of the whole show, which I kind of liked. He's this kind of interloper in the show, it felt like. He's just not to this extent, but kind of like the Joker in The Dark Knight.
Sure.
When the movie's just kind of going along, it's this dark, gritty movie, and all of a sudden, here comes a fucking Joker to fuck shit up, and then he gets the hell out of there. And that's kind of how Mr. Robot kind of feels in this episode. He just shows up, and you're wondering, who is he? What's he gonna do? And of course, the way Slater acts, and he has that voice, and this whole, I don't know, aura, I don't know. It's just so colorful.
There's a layer of quiet charisma about the character.
There you
where
go.
It's like he can just kind of sit there and give you a look, and you're like, oh wait, I'm in some kind of secret club right now. This is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And in fact, when I say secret club, he basically takes him to this rundown, ramshackle ex-carnival building in Coney Island.
Yeah, it's an arcade. It's an old, screwed up arcade that's on Coney Island with the Ferris wheel outside. But before that, Elliot has to make a decision.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah.
So this bum. We've only seen him collecting change and sleeping on subway cars. This bum comes up to Elliot and basically says, if you left the DAT file there, you can come with me.
He's even more cryptic than that. He's like, you're going to want to follow me, but only if you didn't delete it.
That's right. Yeah.
And
yeah.
Elliot's like, wait, are you talking to me? Because it's such a cryptic reference. So he runs out there. And basically, Mr. Robot doesn't give him any information at that point. But Elliot is so intrigued. And we're intrigued.
The only thing he gives them as they're waiting for the next train to come by tells a little story about his old man.
Yeah.
His father, who was a small-time thief. And he basically said the moral of what Mr. Robot learned from his dad was that everybody steals.
Yeah.
Everyone does. Somewhere along the line, someone's getting more and someone else is getting shafted. And that's how Mr. Robot was taught how the world works.
That was his father's worldview. But that worldview kind of broke when his father went to jail.
Right.
Because remember,
his father got busted.
Yeah, because he's
in the story.
When my dad said that, I used to think that shit was cool. But then he went to jail, and I realized he was always in jail because he was a slave to money.
That's true. The invisible hand.
Yeah, the invisible hand, exactly.
Yep.
So we always come back to that.
Yeah.
We always come back to that. So yeah, then Slater takes him on this mystical trip almost.
Train ride to Coney Island.
Exactly.
We're going to Brooklyn.
We're going to Brooklyn. Gotta wait for the Q train. I sound like Mark Maron more than Christian Slater there. Pow! I just shit my pants. All right. Oh, I did notice something.
I would love to see Mark Maron as Mr. Robot.
Oh, yeah.
Huh? Is that good? Yeah. All right. Wait, what's a DAT file? What the, where's my coffee? Boomer!
So this F Society arcade is such a cool set.
It really is.
Yeah. It's going to be here in Austin. They're going to recreate it here on Congress Avenue.
Sweet.
Just in a few days, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that'll be cool. So we learned that F Society, which is the hacker group that Mr. Robot, Christian Slater's character, I guess leads. It seems like he's the leader, right? Mm-hmm. We don't really know because he doesn't really talk to any of the other hackers that are in there.
Right. He describes the whole thing as that, like, we come here, we work on the project. Like, once we leave those doors, the project stays here. Our encryption is the real world.
Yeah.
He's talked about some other hacker groups, which are real hacker groups, actually.
Yeah.
He talked about...
the Omegs.
Yeah, the Omegs, who basically got busted by various types of communication outside of the thing.
Yeah, because they're chatting online. And and with Mr. Robot, I mean...
With F Society.
And with F Society, they don't chat, they don't send emails to each other, they don't leave a digital trail.
Exactly.
Which is interesting because that's not the way Elliot does it.
Right.
Elliot doesn't go and talk to people. So it's kind of like this hacker group is pulling him into a social group or the real world. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, now you really have to talk to people face to face if you want to be part of this.
Yeah.
And so basically he learns that Mr. Robot gave him a test. Leave the DAT file, don't leave it. If that was a test. So he did leave it. So he passed. But there's nothing Elliot can do at the moment. So he just wanted to whet his appetite. It's like, you like that hack? You thought it was very sophisticated? Guess what? That was us.
It's a little bit like little Tim Drake running around Gotham City, and then who lo and behold, is there to kind of help him along, but the fucking Batman.
That's right. Yeah.
Where it's like, hey, kid, you got the goods. And welcome to the Batcave,
So after all this, Elliot finally gets home early in the morning. Angelo shows up, has his
copy of his favorite movie, Back to the Future 2.
One of my favorite movies.
It's a great one.
Yeah. Good taste, Elliot. And she's like, you want to just get high and watch this?
Yeah.
He's like,
best
okay.
friends.
Yeah, best friends.
Yeah.
So they walk in, and there's Shayla.
Shayla's still sleeping.
And she doesn't even know
she's still naked.
And she's still naked. She doesn't even know what day it is. So he kicks Shayla out like a dick.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, don't be mean to Shayla. She's your friend.
She's sweet.
She gives you free drugs.
Yeah.
She likes you. She's cute. Come on. Anyway, he kicks her out because he's really obsessed with figuring out who F Society is, who Mr. Robot is, but he can't find a trace of them online. He looks up the history of their property, and something weird here.
Yep.
He finds out that there's no current owner, but the guy who owned it a year and a half ago was shot and killed, murdered. Yeah.
And it was Fun Society Incorporated. Was the name of the arcade.
Right.
Because on the facade of the building, it says F Society right there. I'm like, come on. That's like, going back to a Batman reference, that's like the 60s show where it's like, the abandoned killer candy company. Oh, I wonder where the Joker's hiding out. It couldn't be more obvious. But then upon second watching, it's like, it was called Fun Society, and the UN just kind of broke off.
The UN just happened to break off.
You're right. Yeah. But yeah, he digs up through Google Maps and looking at public records to try to find what's up with the property. And that's the only thing there is. Previous owner is dead.
Yeah. So he's really intrigued now. He even says, this guy's good. So maybe I want to be on his team. So he goes back himself. Mr. Robot really did whet his appetite.
Yeah.
And then this is when we're introduced to Darlene, played by Carly Chaikin.
Carly Chaikin. Oh.
Another beautiful woman on the show.
She's so great. And she's fucking hilarious, too. She has a good edge to her.
Yeah.
And her episode where she was a guest on Marin was freaking hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, she's great. She's so good.
And, okay, Darlene, just right off the bat, is just super rude to Elliot.
It's like, what the fuck?
What the fuck? Calls him a dick.
Yeah.
It is like they've known each other
and
for
she
years.
wrote the rootkit.
That's right.
That was instrumental in that big hack.
That's right.
Which Elliot locked, so he only has control over.
So she's upset because she can't get into it.
She can't get access to
Right.
it, and Elliot's the only one who can get in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's like, when are you going to give us access, you dick?
Yeah, she's pissed off.
She's like, I've never met you.
Yeah,
Who are you?
Exactly.
And so she leaves, and all along comes Mr. Robot. And he's happy because he's got the last Twinkies from the store.
Yeah, the last box of Twinkies. You want one?
And this is where we get another super important scene.
Oh, yeah.
On the Ferris wheel. On this. Okay, you're from New York. Have you been to Coney Island?
Yeah.
Okay. Are the Ferris wheels like that? Like cages? Where
Yeah.
they lock you in? Really?
I mean, like a lot of those rides were built in like the fucking 50s and 60s,
right. So
they're still maintained and they still work. But yeah, those things, like I really don't think the Ferris wheel they're going to have at South by Southwest is going to be that big or impressive. It's probably going to be like half the size.
Right.
I mean, you go on some of those things and it is like being in some kind of like nightmare contraption.
Yeah, because I'm from Texas. We don't have those here. We have the open air ones.
Right.
Yeah. So that was kind of creepy.
They're in this Ferris wheel, and they're basically talking. Essentially, Mr. Robot, what he's basically doing is he's telling Elliot the big plan.
The big plan. Yeah.
Essentially, it's we're going to take down this corporation, and then 70% of the world's debt is going to go away. The invisible hand that controls people is going to let people go.
Yeah, we call it the invisible hand. Christian Slater calls it the operating system of our world.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah. The fact that they're in this rusty wheel that's churning just churning on and on and on is just kind of like a physical metaphor for this ongoing problem that hasn't been solved since Catcher of the Rye, Catcher in the Rye. This ever-churning machine that everyone's just a wheel in.
That's a good observation. Yeah, so basically, Mr. Robot and F Society want to take down Evil Corp. Evil Corp owns all the credit card data centers, so if you wipe out Evil Corp servers, all debt is gone. Everybody's set back to zero. it's pretty much...
Everyone's free.
Well, yeah, but it's pretty much Tyler Durden's plan in
It
Fight
totally
Club.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tyler Durden's plan in Fight Club. It's interesting how he wants to start this, though. He wants Elliot, who's the only one with access to the root directory, to plant Terry Colby's IP address in it. And of course, Terry Colby is the technology exec at Evil Corp.
Yeah.
Not Tyrell Wellick, but Tyrell's boss.
Right, Terrell's boss, right.
And so
Elliot still needs a little convincing. He's still not sure if this is what he wants to do. I mean, Mr. Robot basically says it's like you don't take a corporation down. You
don't hit it in the heart.
Because it has no heart.
Right.
You take down limb from limb from limb.
So that's why they're taking down this one guy first.
Yep.
Because the effects might be more lasting if it's like a more organic crumble. And Mr. Robot says something that we know will appeal to Elliot. Because throughout the whole episode, Elliot has been talking about how capitalism is terrible and how he wants to save the world. And Mr. Robot dangles this carrot in front of him and says, if you do this, you'll set in motion the largest revolution the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
And so this is a big deal. But he's still not sure what he's going to do. Actually, he tells Christian Slater, he tells Mr. Robot that he's probably going to turn him in. But of course, Mr. Robot knows better. And then we get this lovely scene that is just this wonderful musical montage set to Neil Diamond's If You Go Away. The lyrics on the surface, they talk about someone who has to make a decision. Do you go? Do you stay? Do you go? Do you stay? So obviously that's what Elliot's going to do. He's walking all over New York. And again, New York looks beautiful in this show. As the scene progresses, you kind of get the idea that he's excited by this prospect. Of being a part of this hack, of taking down Evil Corp. And that's when the song kind of bursts into cheer mode. You know what I mean? And it kind of mirrors his mindset at that point, his emotions. And it's just a perfect scene. And it's great because up until this point, we've gotten a lot of, the score has been kind of all dark and brooding and digital.
And now we have this rich orchestral
melodic pop song that this Neil Diamond who for all intents and purposes is lame, but it really works here. It kind of changes the mood, changes the tone, and it makes you, what it did for me was it made me zero in on this moment, and it made me get in Elliot's mindset to think about the pros and cons of the situation. And that was probably the intention, and it worked.
He also goes on his computer and he logs in. He basically sees how bad his best friend Angela's student loan debt is.
She has like almost $200,000.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably credit cards, student loans, and not being able to pay on the premium. So it just kind of gets jacked up. If he's going to be able to help in any way possible, especially to the person he cares about the most, this could be the one shot.
But ultimately, before this meeting that he has to have with the FBI and with Allsafe and with Colby and with everybody at E-Corp, he decides, okay, I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to give F Society up. But what happens is Evil Corp rears its evil head again in the form of Terry Colby being
a complete
dick to Angela.
Yeah.
She's very composed and very professional. She's trying to lead the meeting and the only woman in the room.
That's true.
And this guy can't have it. Misogynistic prick.
That's right. She was the only one in the room.
And she can't get a word out because he's just dressing her down. And he kicks her out of the meeting. Kicks her out of the meeting. If there's anything that's going to anger Elliot, it's this.
This is the thing.
Yeah, this is the thing.
After this happens, he reaches in his bag, pulls out the blue folder.
Right.
And puts the white folder away. And this is it. He's all in.
It's funny because he knows this is going to fuck you over, Colby.
Yeah.
So it's a personal thing against this guy, but it's also a political thing. There's tons of motivations behind this.
Yeah.
And there's also the idea that we learned at the beginning that Evil Corp basically killed his father. So there's so many motivations for him to do this. But Tyrell notices.
That's true.
Tyrell notices that he has one folder up and then he switches it out. So there's a little more to Tyrell. Will we see him in the future? I think so. And this is where, again, I started feeling like, okay, is Elliot really an unreliable narrator? Because 19 days go by.
That's true.
Without anything happening, right?
He goes back to Coney Island.
No one's there.
Nothing happening at F Society.
F Society is cleaned out. And then he's starting to think, well, even before this, he was questioning whether or not he actually met Mr. Robot. Was that all in his head?
Right.
He even says, am I schizo? What's happening? And at this point, he's really starting to believe it. And me as a viewer, I'm starting to believe it too. I was like, was that really all in his head? Did it not happen? How did they clean that place out overnight? Why has nothing happened in almost a month's time? Terry Colby hasn't been arrested. Mr. Robot hasn't reached out. His whole crew is gone. All those terminals are gone from there. What's happening? What's happening? And so Elliot is just worried about this. And so are we. Not only because we want something to happen, but also because we're not sure if what happened was real.
Right.
So
right.
you're wanting an answer. And so does Elliot. So he has to take his mind off this. So what does he do? He goes and fucks with the therapist's boyfriend.
That's right.
He's like, I gotta take my mind off of this.
We're coming back to the B plot.
Yeah, the B plot.
Or the G plot. I mean, because there's so many many stories going on here.
But basically, he threatens him and says, I'm going to go to the police with this unless you break up with Krista. And you tell her everything because she needs her radar reset so she doesn't end up with another guy like you. And then he takes his dog. I'm taking your fucking dog,
I'm taking
too.
Flipper. I like you, Flipper.
Oh, yeah. That's such a sweet scene. He takes him home and he's falling in love with the dog.
Yeah, yeah.
I like you, Flipper. You're cool.
Previously, he only had a little beta fish named QWERTY. But now he has a little puppy.
He even said, without QWERTY, I'd be completely empty.
Yeah.
But now he has a puppy. Good for him. And then we finally get an answer to the question of whether the hack was real or not. And it happens in a really interesting point in the episode. Of course, it's the end. It's when Elliot's finally confronting Angela because she's upset that he tried to stand up for her in the meeting. And she's like, I don't need you doing that for me.
Yeah,
which is
I can
understandable.
fight my own battles.
I can fight my own battles,
Yeah.
which is totally understandable. The therapist encourages him to confront her about it because it's been weeks and he hasn't.
Yeah,
It's like, well, just talk to her, you idiot. And they reconcile because they know each other. And it's like an old friend. She's like, I'll get over this. I'm just pissed right now, but it's fine. And he's like, yeah, I do know. You already knew they had a deep connection, but at this point, there's such a familiarity between these two. And they start to look into each other's eyes. And it
the camera
almost
subtly
starts
to move.
It almost seems like a romantic drama type of scene. The camera moves in on them. It looks like, well, are they going to kiss?
Then you see people in the background standing up.
Everybody's standing up and staring their direction.
Yeah.
You're like, well,
oh shit! Oh, it's a workplace possible romance.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what we think.
That's what we think.
And then,
but no,
the camera turns around. Elliot and Angela look around, and they're watching the TV. Terry Colby arrested by the FBI.
Arrested.
Brought in.
So the frame on Terry Colby works.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's going down, and finally, the big celebration here isn't the fact that this guy's going down and the plan to bring down Evil Corp is on.
Right.
That's part of the celebration, sure, that you feel as a viewer. But for me, it was more like, this is real. It happened.
It happened.
It happened.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's proof that it happened.
It's proof that it happened. And Elliot's just totally overwhelmed by this. And he runs out into Times Square and he sees it everywhere on the Jumbotrons. And
then the Men in Black come up and talk to him.
The Men in Black are real, I guess.
The Men in Black are also real too.
Yeah.
And they
shove him in a car. And at the beginning of the episode, he thinks they're following him because he thinks they've figured out that he's a hacker and he can take people down.
Yeah.
So at this point, you're thinking, oh shit, they know what he did and he's going to pay for it. They know he framed Colby, et cetera, et cetera. But no, the Men in Black gently escort him into the room that we saw at the beginning of the episode that was
all
full.
Those shadowy, out of focus executives.
The 1% of the 1%. And who's there at the head of the table? Terrell Wellick. Bonsoir, Elliot.
And then the last thing Elliot says, he looks straight at the camera.
And he has to say this, right?
Are you seeing this too?
Yeah. Unreliable narrator. Is this happening?
Yeah, so great. Holy shit. And what a great pilot, man. Leads you right up to there, takes you back visually and thematically, and credits roll.
Well, there were some Easter eggs in this episode I want to discuss.
Okay.
Really quick before we go. The writer and creator of the show, Sam Esmail, is in the show in the first subway scene. He's just hanging out in the back.
Okay, good. He's doing more of an understated Hitchcock style of cameos.
Hitchcockian.
As opposed to the Quentin Tarantino, I'm going to be in half the movie style cameos.
You know how Elliot, when he hacks somebody, he puts all their data on a CD.
Yes.
And he names that CD like Pink Floyd or whatever,
Right,
so it's kind of covert. There was a U.S. Army private first class. Her name was Chelsea Manning. She was Bradley Manning at the time, but she transitioned in 2013, who used to do something like this. She saved 91,000 secret documents to a CDR labeled Lady Gaga. She was convicted in 2013 of violations of the Espionage Act. because she disclosed all this information about the Army to WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
And she was sentenced to prison for 35 years.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And like we were talking about earlier, another one, the hacker collective Mr. Robot references in the arcade is real. The Omega. They were sold out to the FBI by their leader. His name was Sabu. They were the ones behind the Sony hack.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
A little bit of technobabble part of the show. Well, in the first scene where Elliot shows up at Allsafe, Gideon's talking to him about the hack that he thinks is awesome. Elliot says this is a Rudy attack, an RUDY attack, which stands for Are You Dead Yet?
Oh.
Which is basically a denial of service tool that slowly incapacitates a server through constant attacks.
Interesting.
That's what a Rudy attack is.
Are you dead yet? That's creepy.
Are you dead yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. The rootkit. Of course, Angela asks Lloyd, what's a rootkit? He says it's a rapist with a big dick.
Yeah.
A rootkit is actually a component that allows some malware to hide inside an operating system. There's a real-life security tech who writes articles on GeekWire about all the real tech used in Mr. Robot.
Oh, okay, cool.
And he says the rootkit is kind of like a Jedi mind trick that makes malware files and network connections disappear.
Nice.
Another one, the Linux operating system that Tyrell mentions.
When you're using GNOME.
Yeah. Those are real. Gnome's real. And Tyrell uses another one. I forgot what it is.
I forgot what it was.
Yeah. That one's real too. Okay, and we had one listener comment come in from our Facebook group, which you can find at mrrobotpodcast.com/group. This is from Courtney Robinson. Courtney says, the show was in my top 3 for best shows of last year. Right up there with The Leftovers and Fargo. Ooh,
right on.
Good shows.
Yeah.
Glad to see Rami, Christian, and the show getting so much love with the various award shows. That's true. They won Golden Globe and Screen Actors Guild Awards.
Yep.
She says, I love the tone and style of the show. Rami won me over immediately. I'm very curious about the origins of Terrell and what could possibly happen with him next. So are we.
We led right up at the cliffhanger with Terrell.
That's true.
So
yeah, he had the last line, didn't he? Well, he had the last spoken line.
Yeah, last spoken line.
Yeah.
But Elliot speaks to me, Mike.
He speaks to me. I'm his imaginary friend.
We're all so special.
All right. Just like Courtney, guys, we would love to hear your opinions on the show and on our show. You can email feedback@tvipodcast.com. You can find us at Twitter, mrrobotpodcast.com/Twitter. Nate, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Next week, I'm going to have Jason Griffin on from the TV Times 3 podcast. Jason and I are going to talk about episode 2
of
Mr. Robot. All right. That's all we got. Goodbye, friend.
Goodbye.